Well, hello, everybody. I'm Rick Dancer. Welcome to Get Real with Rick Dancer. And Oregon, you are in so much trouble. Your governor is just up to no good unless you're somebody who lives in the country and you have no desire to keep your water rights. We've had a number of bills introduced by both Republicans and Democrats, and the people have fought and you have won, sort of. Each time those laws, those bills have been tabled. But CJ Nugent, who's going to join us in just a second here, he keeps watching them and he's finding them turning up in different locations, different ways. And this newest one is Senate Bill. Oh, I wrote it down and I moved my paper. 1154. Is that right? CJ, just nod your head. Yeah, 1154. And this one puts all the other bills to shame because this includes everything plus the kitchen sink. So we're going to talk. CJ is going to go through those with us. If you live, honestly, the last time we did this, I said if you lived in rural Oregon, you need to be really concerned. Well, you do. But this isn't just rural Oregon anymore. This is getting way out of hand. We want to thank our sponsors. Is the man, and he loves sponsoring our show so that we can do stuff like this to inform Oregonians, because if you aren't informed, we're in big trouble. So if you're looking for a dentist who cares about patriots, cares about your rights, cares about your freedom of speech, is against censorship, there's a number on the screen. Give him a call and get him in. He even gives you his cell phone number. Isn't that weird? I mean, I'm his friend and he gives me his cell phone number, but he gives all of his patients his cell phone number in case you have a problem. Who does that? I don't know. Anyway, let's bring CJ on. CJ, how you doing, buddy?
I'm hanging in there, my friend. How are you, Rick?
I'm good. So CJ just called me this afternoon and I had a lady cancel, and it was perfect because I guess this is what we're going to talk about, because this is perfect. And I think it's much more important than what we were going to do. But you've been going through, how many bills have you so far looked at and have been tabled now?
Well, there's been quite a few that I do firmly believe that because of the movement that I've started and the concerns people have, as they rightfully should be, I will just say there's been over 5 that I can pretty much confirm have died. And probably significantly more, but those are the ones I can pretty much confirm. But there's definitely more than 5, and hopefully a few more soon.
Doc Shelley has a question already, real quick. This has nothing to do with water, but Lynn County tax assessors are coming to everyone's house soon for tax reasons. Can I refuse them? You do not have to let the assessor in your home. You have to let them walk around your home, but I would never let an assessor inside of my home or my barn or my shed or anything. They can't go up and peek in the windows. What they can see from outside, they can see. So if it is me, I'd close the curtains, close the blinds, make sure everything's closed up, and be kind. But I did that. We had that a couple of years ago when we bought our house here in Montana, and I would not. She stood at the door, and we just said, "Nope, you can view it from where you see it." And she walked around our house, and we went around and closed all the blinds. So anyway, that has nothing to do. Doc, you're welcome. That would be my advice. So CJ, tell people what this new bill, 1154, Senate Bill 1154. This is designed by from the governor's office herself. Kotek.
That is correct. I have definitely. I have actually had my hands on this bill since pretty much the beginning of session, and I've kind of watched it. It's just kind of sat there idly. But the governor has a pretty big plan based around water and on multiple aspects, including but not limited to the water measurements, shutting down transfers. I mean, there's so much going on in water. I mean, it is a key focus for the governor in this term for her. What I can tell you is that this is on the Senate side, not the House side. I only know one senator currently, so it's kind of scary because all the contacts I formed the last couple months has been on the House side, and on this Senate side, I don't know anybody. and that's a little scary. And I don't know if they know my name. I have a feeling they do.
I would kind of bet that you, and tell people also your Facebook page while we're on the
yeah. Oh yeah. For anybody that hasn't done it already, Oregon Water Unity is a Facebook group that I started. I tried my best to keep it nonpartisan, non-biased for the most part until I see such a overreach of a bill like this. It's too hard to be nonpartisan on a bill like this, but I do try and do unbiased. I'm not getting paid off. I have no money gains from this. I simply love.
You're a well driller, and some of the things they are proposing doing, you would actually benefit from as a business. And
oh my goodness, in this bill, this would set me up for decades. For the rest of my working career, if this bill went through, holy moly, it would be huge. And I will get to that soon, Rick, on why it will do that. But this, I am actually going against, again, just like 3419 with people. Some of this stuff would really benefit our industry, but it's not right. It is an overreach. It is actually, I've been in contact with a few of my good friends. One of them is a police officer. And he said that this bill violates the Fourth Amendment. I have another friend that is very big into constitutional law, and she said that it violates like 5 or 6 different constitutional amendments, both state and federally. And everybody, and I've had a few questions already asked, like, well, how can they do that? Well, I'm just going to say, Rick, I don't want to get into this portion because we're tired to talk about water, but look what they're doing with our Second Amendment.
Right.
And right to speech. I mean, look at what Facebook is doing, our censorship. I mean, I'm already noticing censorship on my end. I'm seeing Facebook trying to remove posts that I have put down. They're putting my posts that are getting huge amounts of views. They're putting them at the bottom of my page. I keep unpinning. I keep having to repin them. They're doing some weird stuff, Rick, since I started doing all this. Just so you know, it's crazy. I never experienced this firsthand.
So all of you guys who are watching on this and coming on, share this on your pages, because this will go live right now to your pages, and anybody on your page will see what's going on, because Oregonians need to understand. CJ, what is this going to do? Kind of go through.
Okay. Brass tacks. This bill covers almost everything in rural Oregon. I mean, it touches on water meters. It actually, and I've been reading this bill for a month, but the amendments added an extra like almost 20 pages that were dumped yesterday. The bill is being heard next week
on Tuesday, right?
I believe it's on Tuesday, and it is one of the, I think it is the last Senate hearing. It was supposed to be heard this week, I thought, and then they kicked it down the road. I'm watching so many bills, Rick. It's just, it's crazy right now. I mean, I just testified on several bills on Monday, had some good dialogue with the House reps there, more based around like well construction fees and stuff. So I was pretty good at that. But anyways, I could honestly talk for 6 hours on this bill or more. So I already see we're in at 8 minutes. Can I just dive right in?
You dive right in, buddy.
Okay.
I want people to know this is for information.
Yes. So this is 83 pages long, and there are everything from water rights, both on permitted water rights, domestic uses, a lot in communities, a lot they touch on septics in this. They touch on accessing private property basically without due cause, and they also touch on abandoning of wells that have problems. And at the owner's dime, I see zero financial help from the government, and usually, we'll get to that. So I'm just going to start from the top. Okay. I'll make it quick. Cause there's a lot in here. Basically, this is groundwater quality concern areas. I printed off this map so everybody can see. So this is,
Lane County. Okay, so go slower. So we got Lane County and Lynn County. This is Gillum, Morrow, and Umatilla. Okay.
Okay. And then there's this one. This is my county, by the way.
Lane, Lynn, and what is the one right?
It kind of touches, I do think it touches a little bit of Benton County as well.
Okay,
and then this one over here, which is, oops, sorry, I'm looking at it backwards here. Northern Malheur County. Now, this is one of the things in the bill that I need to emphasize. Currently, these are just the areas right now. This bill only affects these areas. But what this bill also does is it takes away a lot of the due process for changing these areas. kind of like 3419 had, is so the governor basically puts this in here that the governor can call the shots. From how I read this, the governor can call the shots. So it is not unheard of that within a year, this whole state would be this area or two. And there's also one other thing. I think they're doing this because of the issues in the Umatilla Basin with the Army Depot. There is some issues up there. I'm not going to go into that because I don't live there. I don't know a lot about it, but I did watch a lot of videos. There are definitely issues up in that basin. However, the way the words are in this bill, this will give the governor, from what I can understand, the ability to switch these areas as she deemed necessary. And that is a scary thought, that she could ultimately, if this bill goes through as amended or as the original bill, she say, okay, the whole state of Oregon has a problem one way or another. We got to address these. Boom. Now all these laws are into effect, all these statutes. So with that being said, typically the Umatilla Basin that I know of have nitrate issues, but this bill doesn't specify just nitrates. There's areas in my neck of the woods and down south in Eugene, Lane County, that have, arsenic problems in their wells.
A lot of wells have.
Exactly. As you get closer to the coast, they have high minerals, whether usually it's saline or salt water, usually if you go too deep as a driller. But they don't specify nitrates only. So they could say, okay, Lynn County, this whole area has arsenic problems. Well, Rick, people can treat this. When they buy this property, this comes up in the well test and they say, okay, well, if you want to buy this, you have to treat it. Okay, great. This is my dream home. I'll just treat it. Off we go. And that's the end of it. But this is where I'm about to go next, is just huge. Okay, so, gosh, I see the time clicking and there's so much to cover. Okay, so measuring the efficiency of mitigated requirements for keeping records. All this stuff. We are talking just pages. All the bold, by the way, for you that don't know, all the bold is changes in statute. The bold is changes, and then if they have little asterisks or the little the square things around them, that's eliminating stuff out of statute. And there are a dozen plus pages of this. So that's how much. This first page is all the statutes that this bill is covering. It's a half a page full of just statutes.
So changing statutes we already have on the books that maybe allow for arsenic and or these other things, as long as it's treated. Could they potentially go in and say, this whole area cannot be, we're condemning it. It can't be, nobody can build on this because it has arsenic.
I'm going to get to that. Rick. That's coming up soon. Okay, so this is the big one. This is on page 19. This is one of the biggest ones that, literally this page is brutal. I can read it. If this happens, a county may prohibit the development of any new residential dwelling or accessory dwelling otherwise allowed under this chapter within a groundwater quality management area, unless the dwelling is connected to urban water supply services, yada, 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 or a community water system. So, Rick, just to tell you, in layman's terms, that is shutting down building in these counties unless they can hook up to city water or a community well, which then that's where you start getting into water meters. That's where you start getting into annual testing, measuring and reporting. And then I'm going to get to that because they also cut the gallons down significantly later on in the bill, and they do it multiple times. So as I read it, because there's so many different areas of this, but it takes 15,000 gallons and puts it into 5,000 gallons. And then you start getting into water rights, which, remember, Rick, they shut down last November. So you see, this is all coming to a head. It's starting to make sense for me now as a professional that there's no way around denying that they are trying to shut water down, and they're doing it a little bit at a time. But this bill, however, is throw the whole deck of cards in. We're going to get it all. I do have multiple people that have reached out to me at the Capitol now. There, two just in the last 24 hours that have told me that this bill is going forward. Just so you know, very reliable sources that this bill is going forward. I'm not going to say their names, but I can just tell you they're very reliable. And
so why do they want to control the water that way? Do they feel like it's being depleted or it's going away, or Are they trying to push people out of
I mean,
rural
look at Rick. Look at third world countries. What establishes a place in a third world country? What establishes residences? Water. Water is the key to life. I'm kind of preaching to the choir, but I have to emphasize that because if you control the water, if you can limit the water, you essentially control the population. And I think that scares the government, both on a state and federal level, because you have people living up in the woods 100 miles out of town that have a well. And a lot of these people, they may not even have power, but by golly, they got a well, they got a generator, they got a hand pump, and they have water. They can survive. They can survive. But you shut that water source down, how long can they survive? If they're trying to drink out of a stream, well, most of our streams probably have some sorts of contamination now. They'll get sick. They could die. I mean, all sorts of stuff. But let me continue with this, Rick.
Hold on, just real quick. Yeah. Lori is asking that the bill number is Senate Bill 1154. But Senate Bill 1154. Okay, go ahead.
And the dash one amendments. The dash one amendments is important. Okay, the second part of this is the Land Conservation and Development Commission may adopt rules. We talked about that before, but rules are they can do kind of whatever they want in the rules. They can't. And anyone that tells you different, anybody that tells you any different hasn't been on a rules advisory committee meeting before. Or on
LCDC is very powerful.
Yes. Adopt rules to administer this section. Listen to this, Rick. Including rules establishing conditions under which counties must prohibit new residential development. I just read that word for word.
If you have property that you have already approved to subdivide or to put 10 acres, or you want to have your child have a hardship waiver and have some, a modular on your property or something, they can turn you down because of water issues.
Absolutely. And that all goes back to this changing this groundwater management area, which again, the governor would be able, if this bill goes through as amended, would be able to essentially change it with very little to no public comment that I can even see. She can just do it, or any governor for that matter, not just her, but any governor. So that's a very scary precedence. Now, I'm going to keep going. This is where, in my opinion, and my law enforcement friends' opinion gets into this on, this is the next section. This page 19 is brutal. Section 19, page 19, after declare of groundwater management area, the department, the DEQ, may enter onto private property at reasonable times to inspect residential subsurface sewage disposal. So, septic systems or alternative septic disposal systems. And then here's the catch. So I actually talked to the liaison with the governor's office about this, because the original bill didn't have this in it. And I said, this is pretty rough. And they said, before carrying out an inspection under this section, the department shall give notice of the inspection to the property owner and any tenant residing at the property, and take reasonable steps to arrange a convenient time for the inspection with the resident of the property. Now, that seems great, but this is in statute. Everything else, like things like, well, what happens if they don't answer? What happens if they say no? All that goes into rule. So this is essentially allowing government services to go on your property. Like in statute, that sets a dangerous precedence for everything, doesn't it, Rick?
Yeah.
There's no. Well, it doesn't say we have to have reasonable cause. It doesn't say that we have to have a search warrant. It doesn't say we have to have cease and desist, anything like that. It just says may at reasonable times enter on a private property. I don't know how you feel about that. That scares me a lot.
Well, and then what can that be used in the future to translate into what the question is at the beginning of the show? When the assessor comes, I'm going
to answer that question in a few minutes. So that is one of the worst parts now, but there are just as equally bad parts. Okay. They can classify or reclassify an underground reservoir and a groundwater. Everything we're talking about is a groundwater concern area, which is small right now. But an underground reservoir, classified or reclassified, that could mean many things. That could mean anything from underground fuel tanks. It could also mean underground storage tanks. There's a lot of people that have underground storage tanks. This is saying that they can basically essentially make you take them out if they deem it a health threat. So that's another thing. I mean, I'm just trying to touch up on important ones because now this is probably one of the bigger things of the bill. Okay. So currently, as I read it, this is going to talk about community wells. Anything over 3 households goes into community standards with the Oregon Health Authority. They have to have a plan, review process. There's a bunch of things that you have to do, okay? And a lot of them require water rights when they get above a certain amount. They're mobile home parks. We talked about that in the first video, but there's a big bunch of bureaucratic red tape that you have to go through to get one of these wells. But what they're doing, to my knowledge, they're taking, currently it's 15,000 gallons per day, and they're lowering it down to 5,000 gallons per day. Now, before you say anything, Rick, you may ask yourself, well, why is this in here? This bill is talking about critical or groundwater management areas, quality management areas. So we're talking about water quality, not water quantity. And that's where this bill becomes overreaching, because now they're saying, okay, well, it was this amount, but now we're going to sneak this in. And by the way, this wasn't a mistake. This was put in 4 different times in this bill. In these exact words, the amount of equivalent water does not exceed 5,000 gallons per day. So it's at 4 different times.
So they can start controlling how much water you take out of that.
And that seems like a lot of water, right, Rick? 5,000 gallons, that's a lot of water. But,
not.
You know, my neighbors are on a shared well. There's 3 of them, and they, you know, do a little bit of irrigating, and one of them has a bunch of kids. They probably use quite a bit of water. So if that's 5,000 gallons for 3 households, that's not very much when you have all 3 neighbors wanting to irrigate a little bit of a lawn, wash their car, take a shower. Now all of a sudden,
would they meter? So they're going to meter it. They'd have to meter it to watch it.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I am going to go out on a limb here, and I am totally okay to do that, because I will fight this bill with every ounce of breath I have. I think it is bad for the American people, or sorry, for Oregonians. I think it's terrible. But also, I'm glad you brought that up, because what I think is going to happen personally, since that 3419 and the water meters have just been, I mean, people really have been locked step and, you know, on water meters, right? There is some language in here about metering wells, but it's the original bill had all of water meters in it, like requiring water meters, require mandatory reporting. They took that out. I told them to. Actually, I mean, I don't know if they did it because of me, but I was definitely the flag that said, hey, you guys need to take this out. So they did, I think, listen to me on that part, but, or somebody said it, but I mean, I was talking to them at this point when I saw this got scheduled. But to clarify one last time, this is a quality bill, like based around groundwater quality. Why do they have things, why are they putting gallons per day restrictions in this bill? See where I'm getting at, Rick? They're talking about quality, and this is quantity.
But CJ, they haven't taken out the metering, really, because in order to check, to figure out how much water you're using, you're going to have to put a meter on there. So the wording
exactly. So I think what will happen is
so they've made it so that we have to figure out if you're using 5,000 gallons. So in order to do that, then the LCDC or DEQ will come in. And what they don't have to do, they'll create the way that you do that. So how do we check that? Well, everybody has to put a meter in. So then everybody's going to have to spend more money. Yeah.
Yes. And what else I'm going to tell you is what I think will happen. I think the meter thing has gotten so much attention statewide. I think if this, let's step back for just a minute and say this bill goes forward. Okay. Let's just say it does. All right, Rick. Okay, you know what will happen next legislative system? They'll start implementing some of this stuff, and they're going to be like, crap, it says in statute that they can't exceed 5,000 gallons per day. How are we going to measure that? In statute, that's what it says. Therefore, we have to put a bill forward that requires metering. That's how I've seen this happen. Maybe you have too in your experience, but, oh, shoot, it was a mistake, you know?
Right. We didn't get enough, so we're going to have to figure out a way to make that happen.
Yeah, so, and I've heard this.
The intent the whole time was to meter these wells.
It was in the original bill.
Right.
It was in the original bill, a whole page on water metering, and then they took it out.
So, CJ, can you explain to me as a water guy, what are they so worried about? I mean, somebody's on here. Oregon has plenty of rain this year. There's water out there. You've already grown to, you've got thousands and thousands of millions of people in the state. Why do you need to control? There's the key word, I think, is to control the amount of water people are using when it's on their wells, and they've never done that before. I get it when you're buying it from the city, but when it's they don't own that. The person that owns that property owns that water, and that's the dispute, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think, I could go on and on about what I think, but realistically, let's be real. We're seeing this happen in other states. I've been reached out to by the National Groundwater Association. I've been reached out to by people that live in Washington. Actually, a drilling buddy that I've kind of come in acquaintance with in Colorado, he was talking to me about it. And this is happening in many states. It's not just like Oregon's the spotlight, but I do think that Oregon is, since I'm not trying to get political here, but our founding fathers put our judicial system, our legislative system, all in together for a reason, the way they did it. And hundreds of years later, it still applies. That is my biggest phrase that I like to use, is checks and balances. Regardless of if I was a Democrat or a Republican, no state, no entity should have a supermajority in both houses and the governor. That is not checks and balances. I would say the same thing to you, Rick, if a Republican was in it.
Right.
Because it doesn't, because you can just steamroll people in with your agenda. Right. And by the way, just while we're looking
here in Montana, they're looking at, if you have more than 3 homes, or like 4 or 5 homes in a development, you now have to put a 3,000 gallon fire tank on that property, which raises, we're trying to create affordable housing everywhere. Right. And yet we just keep adding to the cost of building houses. So it's, in some ways, it's happening here in Montana as well.
Right. By the way, Rick, this is the original one right here. Does that look a little like 3419? Installation of measurement device,
there you go.
Monitor reporting. That was in the original bill. This bill I'm talking about, it's still there. And by the way, they don't have to accept this amendment. They could go back to the original bill if they wanted to. Just so you know. So realistically, this is still here. This is still here until either the bill moves forward and gets a vote from the House or in the Senate, or vice versa, or it dies. And that is what, honestly, we're so late in the session. As far as this, I firmly and strongly believe that this bill needs to die as a whole. I haven't even got to some of the other parts, Rick. I mean, this bill, I could just go on all day. Here's what they shut. Now get this. So page 64. The impact of a proposed community or public water well on hydraulically connected surface bodies is similar to or less than the cumulative impact of the abandoned domestic water well. So I'm going to get to that in a minute, but they use the term, the Water Resources Department, the commission uses this term hydraulically connected. That was part of the reason they shut water rights down last year. They used that term very broadly, like there's a well 2 miles away from a stream, they're pumping, whatever. Let's talk a permitted well, 600 gallons a minute in the dead of summer. Well, it's hot. That's when they're using the most water, and that stream trickles down. Well, that means in the department's eyes and in a lot of the stakeholders' eyes, well, that means that well is sucking that stream dry. They don't take into account. They don't take into account drought. They don't take into account that it's the middle of August and we haven't had rain for 4 months. That is something that I tend to see at the whole Harney County thing. Is this study was done in some of the most historic dry times that county has ever seen.
Kind of like those fire maps they put out that were so bogus. You know what I could see happening, CJ, because of that, hydraulically connected. What if you had a neighborhood of people out in rural Oregon, 5 or 6 homes, and their wells are all, on their property, they have 5 or 10 acres. You could stretch that rule to include that now all those people are one well service and they have to start abiding by blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not far off, because like where I used to live in Camp Creek, we affected each other's wells. Everybody knew that you did. So, okay, so you guys, we've done a hydraulic study and we realized that 10 of these wells also, now you fall under this new category of this kind of well service. So you have to be putting this kind, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
rather than just leaving people the hell alone.
Yeah, well, it gets better, Rick. I'm gonna keep feeding you
Okay,
stuff.
keep going. Keep going. I
Okay,
want people
so
to be
here's
informed.
another one. So this has to do with if you're applying to put in like a community water system or a public water well located in these areas. Again, this whole bill is around these areas for now, which are fairly small in the entire broad spectrum of the state. But like I said,
Unless you live there.
unless you live there, yeah. But you just need to assume that if this goes into effect within a few years, that the entire state could have these laws. I mean, you really should assume that. So, but get this. So if they, bear with me here. So a proposed order, so a final order, when you get that from the Water Resource Department, from the commission, that's you applied for either like a water right or a community water system. You get what they call a proposed final order. And we actually get that as drilling professionals too. Say if we instructed or constructed a well improperly, and then they send you a violation, and then they say, well, this is our final order. This is your order on you either have to abandon it, alter it this way type thing. It's called a final order. Okay. So this is the proposed order. So this is just on a proposal, like to do a new thing. Okay. So again, we've already established that there'd be no new building in these areas unless you can do a community. So now what they're saying is the proposed order need not cite the findings and facts and conclusions of law described in these paragraphs, except that the order must include a brief statement that explains the criteria considered relevant to the decision and yada, yada, yada. Basically what that tells me, for in layman's term, is they don't even, if they deny you this, which they probably will, if it's anything like water rights, they'll deny everything if this gets in, because they're doing it with water rights. They already have. Right. And they're still, and now they're going after transfers. This session, which is another bill and doubling fees, it's a mess.
What's a transfer?
Water right transfer. So essentially you can transfer water rights, whether it's from a different farm or from this well to that well. It's a process to move your water rights, which they're trying to shut that down.
Well, how do you have water rights anymore if the state of Oregon's going to take them from you? You know what I mean?
The water rights are grandfathered in under grandfather clause, except for that bill in Harney County. That also that will change stuff, and that could set precedents.
That's what I'm saying, CJ, is what is going to stop them from all of a sudden looking at all the water rights and going, you know what? This water all is in the state of Oregon. It belongs to the state. We'll now tell you who has the right to use what. And, and farmers and cattle, how cattle ranchers are treated. We really don't want to put water out for cattle ranchers because that's, they fart. And when they fart, that puts carbon into the air and that destroys. I mean, whatever the agenda of that particular party that runs the government at that point could do anything they want. This is so dangerous, I think.
Well, I'm about to get to the best part of this bill. I mean, and I'm being very sarcastic right now. But I have to finish this last little bit. So basically in layman's term is the department or the people making these decisions, because in the bill, it's multiple government entities. It could be the OHA, the DEQ, the Water Resource Department, the governor's office. It could be many different things, which is also a scary thought in and of itself, because neither one of them can agree with each other. But that being said, if they give you a final order, if you're a person, you say, I want to develop my property, I want to do a community well, I want to go through the legal process of doing that, they could literally deny them and give basically no cause. They don't have to tell you this is why we denied it because of this, this, and this. They can just say the order must include a brief statement. So what does that mean? Sorry, we can't approve it because of this. So that's a problem, Rick. At least I think it's a problem, because then it's up for, you can't even debate something if you don't know why. I mean, so if you lose your job, if you get fired from a job and your boss says, sorry, you're out of here, you're done. And you say, well, hey, why did you fire me? Like, what's going on? They say, well, I don't have to give you a reason. You see you later. Hasta la vista. How would that make you feel?
So are they saying you can't even use the laws to fight back?
No, they're not. Well, maybe. No, they're not saying that. The way I'm reading it is they're not giving, they don't have to give a reason under statute if this goes through why. They can just do it. They can give you a brief statement. Is it their exact words?
How do you fight that?
You don't. And that's,
we didn't, right. So there's no legal recourse for
and,
it because
and Rick,
denied.
Yeah, and Rick, there's other bills. I mean, I'm telling you, there's over 44 bills that just water related. Another one that was heard, I think, last week about contested cases, and that is in that situation. And it was a massive change. I didn't know a lot about it. I was fighting some other water bills, so I just kind of just got to be honest. I got to pick my battles, and that was not one of them. But they were changing that. Now, this one is something we need to talk about. Okay. Page 73, and this will affect people big time in their pocketbooks if this happens to them. In a groundwater management area, quality management area, under this ORS, the Water Resources Department shall, and it's not may or might, it's shall. So they're forcing them, require the repair or replacement and abandonment of wells described in 537, 545. That is the domestic use statute, by the way. So all domestic wells, and wells permitted under 537, 505 to 795, which is all wells, Rick, all wells. Okay. That are commingling. For the people that don't know, commingling of waters, if this highlighter is your well, if you have a water source coming in right here, and a water source coming in down here, and this water is falling down into the lower aquifer, and the static, which is your head pressure of your water, doesn't come up above, that is what the department calls commingling. I will agree with the department that it is very bad for aquifers. I'm not here to argue that because it is not good news. But this is groundwater and things change. Some of these wells, the statics when they were drilled in the 70s are just fine, but now they might be cascading because maybe that upper water aquifer dried up, causing it to cascade. So what it's doing, Rick, is it's going to make these wells illegal, out of compliance, and they must be abandoned. And, well, I guess it doesn't say they must be replaced, but what are people going to do if their well's abandoned? They're going to drill another one, right? So, but to clarify, these wells are not in the valley floor. I would say 95% of them, 98% of them. These are not your little 50, 60-foot gravel holes that a lot of the valley floors are, maybe 100 foot. These wells are anywhere from 2 to like 700 feet deep. And to seal off some of these, you could have hundreds of feet of steel casing, a plastic PVC liner, temporary start pipe. These wells are the most expensive wells I drill. Let's put it that way. These are the most expensive wells that I drill. Most of these wells start at 20,000 and go up from there, 20 to 50,000 just for the well. Now you're thinking, sorry, go ahead.
Mom and Pa have a house in the 70s. They built on this farmland they have.
Yep.
This statute passes. Something comes out and says, oh, you've got other cascading water coming down into your well. We're going to shut down your water, and you guys got to spend $50,000 to $70,000 to drill a new well, plus the cost of filling in the old well when you have a well that already works.
That is correct. And on top of that, people think abandoning it's as simple as dumping cement down. No, it's not. It's a big process. Sometimes it can take almost as long as drilling a new one. I charge a lot to abandon those wells because they are very, very, very time consuming and the hardest work. Those are the hardest work wells we drill in a year because you're dumping pallets of cement and you can't just take them and dump them down the well. You have to put trimmy pipe down. So we have to set our drill rig up over it, clean the well out, pull the liner, pull the pump, trimmy pipe with pressure grout down to the bottom and move it up. I'm telling you, a 500-foot well takes 4 days to abandon. So I charge like a new well. So it is not unreasonable that this could cost homeowners, oh my goodness, $70,000 to $100,000.
Yeah. And what if it's a retired couple and they can't afford that? Then they're out of their home, and what? Who takes their property? The state?
I don't know, Rick. Somebody will do it, but that brings another good point to think about. So they can't afford it. They're on a fixed income. Well, they can't sell their property without a well.
Right.
And in this is forcing a hand. The water resources shall require. This is not a may or might.
Right.
This shall require. So I want to tell you one thing, that water levels change. That well, and so do rules. The water resources historically is treating wells like if you're remodeling a house, for example, okay, and you want to add a bathroom, right? You should just be able to get permits to add a bathroom, correct? The rest of the house doesn't need to be updated, right? In a well, it's totally different. If you want to deepen the well 20 feet, okay, I get this question a lot from people that want to deepen their wells. I have to say, well, do you have a well log? If they say nope, I'm sorry, can't abandon it. But if they say, oh yeah, I have a well log, then I'll look at it. And 95 out of 100 times that I do this, I can't deepen it anyways because it doesn't fall under current state regulations. So to put that in perspective, if you want to add a bathroom to your house, the only way you could add a bathroom to your house is if you updated the rest of the house to current state, the earthquake, the electrical, the wiring, the everything, the roof, everything has to be current code. That is what they're doing with wells. And they've been doing that for quite a while. So there's no such thing as just deepening a well. Well, where I'm going with this, the reason I'm going to circle around back into this, I know this very well because it's what I do for a living. This is bad. This is so bad that it will, I mean, if they make people abandon this, and the other thing, Rick, there's nothing in this bill, the entire bill, that gives any monies towards these people. They're on their own. They're going to get a final order from the department because that's what it says in statute. And they're going to say, you have so many days to abandon this well. They won't probably force you to drill a new one. I don't think it says that. No, they don't. But like I said originally, you can't not have a well on your property if you don't have access to water. So, do you get my gist? Like they're going to
totally. And then if they tell you can't be using that water, and after 2 months, and they come out in 2 months, and they have a meter on your property now, and they're seeing that you're using the water, they can just evict you.
I mean, that's a whole different ballgame. That gets into land use laws and civil penalties. I don't know, but what I know is
it's like this is Oregon.
This is what I know is I have worked
Russia.
You know, Rick, I have worked on some old wells that have commingling water. I've worked on some, but they were legal when they were drilled because I have the well log. But I was doing like a clean out on some of these wells, but I would never tell who these people are ever for their own safety. But in theory, they would have to abandon these wells and drill another one at their own dime. I mean, some of these wells would be insanely expensive to do, both abandoning and drilling a new one. Now you're talking new underground utilities, new water testing, new pump, because chances are the wells are going to be deeper at that point. More casing, more bentonite, more cement, more liner. I mean, we're talking, this could really make or break people. The people that they find out that have these wells, people that are on fixed incomes, it would literally break them.
So would it affect natural springs and that people have water rights to, or do we know that?
Did somebody ask that question?
Yeah.
It depends. Most springs you can't get loans on anyways, and most entities don't even consider that a primary water source. Not saying they can't do it, but as far as springs, I'd have to think about that. No, not really. It would probably not affect springs. But but that being said, when whoever has springs still, when they go to sell their house, unless you have a cash transaction, you have to drill a well anyways.
Oh, you know what? Lori has a great idea. She says, tell the governor that this is not a well. Your well identifies as a spring.
Oh man,
my well's pronouns are spring and sprung.
That would fly over like a fart in church. Yeah, I don't know, but I have to emphasize that because that's really bad. Now, on a conservation standpoint, these wells aren't good either. Like I am not in any way disagreeing that this is a problem for our state and our water resource. But to put this burden on the landowner is just inconceivable. It's just, I cannot believe that I am reading those words out loud in a statute.
So what's the likelihood of this thing passing? Because, it seems to me that they've done all these water bills, they've thrown them out, and they just keep they keep revising them as something new. This one's been in the clank all the time. It's the end of the session. Are they just going to push this through? And what do people really, what, I mean, there's obviously some Republicans behind this too. Is this, what's the chances of fighting this and winning?
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you right now from a very reputable source. Somebody texted me a few hours ago in the Capitol, and I said, and I basically said I was talking to them, and they said, well, Senator Golden passed the wildfire maps, and he's on the committee, and
What?
he didn't have, and he didn't have a supermajority of both chambers. So the chances of it going through that committee are very likely, unless we can raise a big stink about it. It will probably go through. I have two sources at the Capitol that are very reliable sources. I wish I could say their name, but they asked me not to.
No,
but you just have to trust me that they're very reliable sources. Trust me.
So the wildfire maps that are causing so much problem for people's insurance that passed.
Yes, this Senator Golden will probably vote for this, and so I hope he doesn't, but he could. But Rick, we're running out of time. I need to get to the last few things really quick.
Get to the last couple things. Go ahead.
Okay, this one I'm kind of on the fence about, but also it's, again, doesn't give any money for people to do this. Established by rule, by the way, again, rule, that word rule is real vague, and enforce backflow prevention requirements for the use of surface water in a groundwater quality. So that spring, this applies to that spring. She asked about the springs.
Yeah, you asked about the spring.
I guess I'm putting two and two together. Every time I read this bill, I find more connections, literally. But so backflow prevention requirements, those backflow preventers are about, I don't know, probably $500-600 now, but yearly testing. I had one at my old house and they were a pain in the butt. They were expensive. You got to put them underground. It's a big deal. I'm not totally against that, but again, once again, I will just clarify, there's no money set aside to help these people that are going to be required to be on the hook for a foot of these bills. And then, they double down, by the way. There's no mistake here. In the administration of rules, once again, 537, 505 to 795. That's all wells. All water sources are in there. All of them. Okay. Everything. So springs, that was the original 3419. They covered all those. Okay. This includes everything in the groundwater quality areas as defined in this. The Water Resources Department shall assess water wells, very vague, and require compliance with backflow prevention rules. Should I read that again? Require compliance with backflow prevention rules, not statutes. So this will all be made into rules. I'm telling you, this opens the whole, and by the way, those are domestic use statutes. I'm telling you, this is bad. This is so bad. This right here, that right there, those two statutes, it goes blank to blank. That covers everything water, everything.
So the state's going to have
people that don't believe me, look them up. I encourage you to, because I want to be proven wrong, because I want to know that this bill isn't as bad as I think it is. But I mean, like, there's that, and then we're going to talk about measuring devices. Underground reservoirs require a water right holder using an underground reservoir to install a totalizing measuring device and to submit annually a water use report. 3419 right there. Now, last section that I want to talk about, because we're running out of time. This one gets into the water rights now. The Water Resources Department may deny an application under this section for change of use, place of use, point of diversion, if the department determines that the change will contribute to an increase of contamination of concern in a groundwater quality, groundwater management quality, yada, yada, yada. That was almost the same wording that they used to shut down water rights last year. I'm telling you, this opens up everything. I didn't cover half of the changes. I just covered the important ones. And then, by the way, that is as thick as the bill, right? That's just the amendment.
So why, just in your POV, your point of view, why are they doing this?
I think, I've actually had some discussions with people pretty high up. A lot of this has to do with the quality problems in the Umatilla Basin. I don't want to get into it because I don't know much about it, but what I can tell you is they have a map online that shows all these wells that they've been testing. And a lot of these wells are very old, shallow wells. Old, shallow, 50 plus years old, most of them. Now, I am replacing wells pretty quickly that are 50 years old or older because casing is rotting out. They didn't have hardly any surface seal requirements at that time like they do now. They may not have been constructed properly in the first place. So it's not a huge jump, Rick, to say that I'm not opposed to them abandoning these wells. I just need to, for the record, like I do think something needs to be done in that basin. But I mean, there's other bills that are being put through. That's one of them. And I didn't support on testimony, but I kind of thought it was a good bill, was that it required landlords to have water tested annually for renters on wells. I think that's really wise, because what if their well changes in a year and they're drinking septic water they don't know till their family gets super sick? I think that's a good bill, but they're covering that type of stuff in other bills. So that begs the original question, why are they doing all this? I firmly believe, and I'm probably going to get crucified for this, but I firmly believe that water is the final frontier. They can't control people on wells, and a vast majority of people on wells are more conservative. I think that there's definitely some correlation to all that, Rick. And I think I've thought about it for a long time. My dad told me 20 years ago, 30 years ago when I was a kid, that water will be the new gold, probably in your lifetime. And we're seeing that change right now. As these bills get more and more, we're seeing that change. It may not be worth money as much, but if you have $100,000 in a well project like this, how many years does that take to pay for itself? And how many years, you know what I mean?
Well, and if you, like we were talking earlier, if you're somebody that's, in your 70s and 80s and you've had this home your whole life, and they come out and tell you the well's no good and it's $100,000 to fill that and get a new one, how do they afford that?
Exactly. Take out a refinance or take out a HELOC or move, and they can't sell their house with a bad well. I mean, I don't know what people do.
So what do you suggest people do that are out here? We've got a lot of people watching this.
Okay. Well, let me tell you one thing. If people have not joined my group, they have to join my group. They have to. There's nobody else covering water like I am in Oregon right now. Not a single person that I know of. That would be the first thing to do.
Oregon
Water Unity on Facebook. It's a group. And during the legislative session, I am keeping very few comments intentionally or very few posts, strictly just because there's so much going on in legislation. I don't want the group to get bogged down. Once legislation's over, you can open up the group, have good conversations. But right now, this is about getting the word out to as many Oregonians that this will affect as possible. That is the first step. The second step is I've had several posts about where they can submit testimony, where they can call their senators. Because again, this is a Senate bill. The easiest way to kill a bill or to tell people how you feel and hopefully get a bill killed is to contact senators directly. Call their office, bug them until they call you back, or email them, flood them. That's how 3419 got killed, the original bill, because people were the whole Capitol. I mean, I've had multiple chats with representatives like, man, all people could talk about was that water bill. I'm trying to do an ODOT budget. I'm trying to pass this bill. I'm trying to do this. No, everybody wants to talk about water. That was very effective. This is the new era of legislation, is online presence. And right now, there hasn't been hardly any pushback up until this year on water related issues. And a lot of these senators and reps in these natural resources committees are very kind of, I don't want to use the word intimidated, but they're not used to it. They're not used to the backlash like a lot of the other ones are with public safety, with guns, with religion, with schools, with school boards, you know what I mean? A lot of the other hot topics are. They're not used to this. So going forward, join the group and call your representatives, call your senators. And then if that doesn't work, you can submit testimony online. I will do some links on that soon. I already have one link. You can submit testimony on how this bill makes people feel. I'm not telling people, swaying people one way or another, but I think I explained pretty well how really hurtful this bill could be to many Oregonians. And then the other thing is to show up in person. I mean, I will be at the Capitol when this is being heard. I'm going to testify, and I would love to have 20 or 30 people testify with me. It's free. Yes, it takes some time, but how important is this to you guys to preserve and protect your water rights?
And you will, on that page, on your page, you will let people know what time they need to be there and how to meet. And you could even set up CJ is going to be at this place. 20 people show up with him. And you guys, 20 people doesn't sound like much, but in a hearing, it makes a huge difference.
Especially a hearing in natural resources, Rick. In natural resources, 20, 30 people would be a big deal. And natural resources.
And I would add in there, when you go, don't act like the party of anger and go in and call names. You go in and these are people who are elected, whether you like them or not. You show respect, and you have your written testimony. Read it off your paper. Don't get belligerent. Don't get angry. And just read your comments, but be really succinct about what you're doing and make it short and sweet. I mean, too many people get in there and rant. My grandfather had property. They don't care about that.
Yep. Keep it respectful. Keep it respectful. No swear words. They're going to listen to you. If you say how this makes you feel, how this will impact you, if you're in these areas, you better show up, because if you don't, it's going to cost you in the pocketbook.
So if you're grandpa and you have property and you know this is going to impact your well and you and your wife can't afford it, you go in and tell that story. And that's what's going to make people, and you've got a whole neighborhood of people doing that. And you've got a cattle rancher and you've got a sheep rancher. And, that's how you make change. And CJ's you guys have already shot down several bills. And
quite a few. I'm not trying to rub it in. I don't want to rub it in.
No. This isn't, I'm going to take this just for a second. This is not CJ. Yes, CJ is leading this, he's educating you, but you guys, this is you. You do this, you're doing this. CJ's just giving you the information, and you guys you're actually taking your time and you're going, this matters, and you've killed some bills. And because they listen, because you scare them when you really do care and you get involved in what's going on.
I want to say Rick, I got to say, we're running out of time. I got to say one last thing, one quick thing. You can also submit testimony online and register to testify, and you can go on a video just like this where all the legislators will see you, and you can do that from your own home, from your own computer. So it's very easy to do. Very easy. They send you an email. You click on it when the time comes. 8:00 in the morning is usually when these meetings start. Actually, I don't know about Senate side. Anyways, and you're there. You can have your few minutes to talk, and they have to listen to you.
All right. Anyways, the other thing you can do is take this show and share it on your pages. Share it to your neighbors. Share it to your city councils. If you're on the Coburg, I Love Coburg page, share it on that page. If you're on the Harrisburg garage sale page, share it on that page, because a lot of people don't know this is going on, and this is where you come in. So CJ's doing the work of finding the information so that you don't have to. I'm providing a link here so that other people will see it. You take that information in that video and you throw it out there, and all of a sudden we become a force that Oregon can't deal with. And that's what we want. We want to be a force. They have to reckon with us. If you want our water rights, there's a fight that's going on here. CJ, thank you so much for all you do. Appreciate your time and your effort. You guys too. CJ, I'll talk to you later, man. Thank you for calling today. And the rest of you guys, get on that page, Oregon Water Unity, and then you can find out how things are coming. And again, share this on your page. Don't give up. Oregon is much too valuable to give up on. And this is them trying to get control. And you're not going to give it. You're not going to let them have it.